Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction Renovation magazine. This is what it used to look like. We're digital now. Actually, I'm bringing out the archives. This is January, February 2016. Mr. Hitin Patel from Vision Hospitality out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, just up the road, about an hour and a half across the border from Georgia. Anyway, Hitin, you owe me a story on that church you were building out in, I think it was Utah. So send it to me. We want to feature it. So anyway, but this was a really good looking issue, 154 pages. And I was like looking to see what I was talking about with my publisher's page. And I've got my son here. There he is, Brody. He's looking pretty young there now. He's at Boeing, but I think this was on my birthday. Anyway, yeah, I was probably just getting ready to go into FAA mechanic school and do all that good stuff in Delta. But anyway, he's at Boeing now in Charleston. But anyway, that's what the magazines look like. We went digital. Last issue we printed was August of 2021. We had White Castle VP of Construction on the cover, and they had with their biggest restaurant they'd ever built, and haven't looked back since. Had about 29 million people hit our website last year, and I'm just cruising along. I was just looking at my stats today because I'll go over another 2.5 million this month, and if I keep up that momentum through the remainder of the year, I'll probably break 30 million, maybe go over a little further. So for all you out there that have been consuming our content, and I know, data is addicting, it just makes you come back for more. It's like a really good steak. You got to go back to that same restaurant and get that meal. Really appreciate you hitting our site and, consuming that content. I know it's, I've become a digital guy. I'm in my third boot camp. Got a class tonight. I'm doing, I've got over 10,000 followers on my TikTok, my business account. I'm just rolling. It's just insane how quickly technology has goes. And, what's crazy is the guy's teaching me my class right now. He said, you know what, after you get done with this 8 weeks, everything I taught you is probably going to be obsolete because everything's at warp speed with AI and stuff. So it's just, but you'll have the right foundation to do push button 101. And that's really what digital is. It's just making sure everything goes in there. So, but I hope everybody's having a great week. It's beautiful out here in Atlanta, just sunny. It's hot and humid. That's the South for you, but I think that goes across the country. But just been beautiful. Did have some wicked storms here. Came in last week. I was up in Milwaukee for a reception, and my wife had no power for about 24 hours. Had some really, really high winds, knocked trees down all over the ATL. Snapped them like toothpicks. They said there were tornadoes, but anyway, there was just a lot of debris, and but we're getting back to normal here. I came back, flew back Friday, and I'm driving through from the airport, and I'm just looking at all the destruction. And of course, probably the national news didn't talk about it, but there was a lot of damage here. And one of my buds who's building his house up on the lake, we're ready to break ground on our empty nester house. He had 10 huge oak trees that had to be like 300 or 400 years old. They were signature trees. When he cleared his land, he left them there, and they all got knocked down by the storm. And he did this video. I saw him on Facebook, and he was just, you could hear it in his voice. He was just so devastated, but you know what? That's Mother Nature. You can't control it. So, but anyway, we're getting our act back together here in Atlanta, and all the debris and stuff is pretty much dwindled. So we're in the dog days of summer. School's going to start here in the South here in a couple weeks. Kids, get ready. The bus is coming early, 7 o'clock. And, I grew up in Philly, so we went back to school after Labor Day weekend. That was the gig. You go down to the beach, you hang out, you come back, time to go back to school. You look in the paper and see what class you were in, and any of your friends were in there and all that stuff. So with that said, got a nice guest actually from one of my favorite states up north in New Jersey. I've got Miss Valerie Santanasto. Did I say it right?
You got it.
Oh my God, I didn't butcher it. Thank you so much. And she's with Dancker, and they do integration with a lot of things, and in the commercial sector. So Valerie, say hello from Somerville, New Jersey to our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Hello. Hope everybody's doing great.
Yeah, you got a really cool background behind you there. So, it's nice. Some people have some, they just go nothing behind them, but I like your background. So really, really cool. So the reason why I had Valerie on here is, projects, integration, and Dancker does all sorts of things, and they're into that workplace and making things, as things evolve, as we go into the future, they're there to help you. So that's why, as we kind of flow into the Q3 and Q4 and the remainder of the year, and we get ready to close out 2023, and believe me, it's going to be here before you know it, because look, school's starting in 2 weeks, got Labor Day weekend, a couple months later you got Halloween, Thanksgiving, and then boom, the holiday season's on you. Before you know it's going to be December 31st. I'm going to ring in 2024. I can't even believe I'm even saying that, because it just feels like I just rung in 2023, and this year is just, I think it's the fastest year I've ever had. I turned 60 at the end of June. So it's just, I can't even believe I made it this far. And it feels like yesterday I was just graduating prep school at Petty, off exit 8 off the turnpike. So anyway, Valerie, this is the way it's going to work. We do our episodes in 3 parts. You're going to tell your story, where you grew up, brothers, sisters, played any sports, where you went to school, and how you ended up where you are today. Then we'll talk about the last 3 years of the roller coaster that we've all been on, any lessons learned and any cool projects that you've been working on. And then you'll leave one positive thought or phrase for our listeners out there in Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. And with that said, the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Thank you. Well, and happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So luckily we go back after Labor Day too. So we got a little extra summer up here. Yeah. So my name's Valerie Santanasto, and you get major points for pronouncing that right, because that doesn't happen that often. So I'm impressed, David. So I'm with Dancker, and I'll explain a little more about what we do. But my story is, I'm a girl from Brooklyn, who ended up going to Fordham, and I was studying urban studies. And I happened to meet somebody from 𝐆𝐔𝐘𝐒 at the career fair. And that pushed me into the commercial interiors industry, which I had never anticipated being in. Planning a city is actually not unlike planning an office space or planning a workplace in terms of things like budget constraints and politics. And it's surprisingly close. So something I didn't anticipate going into, but I think a really good fit. I worked for 𝐆𝐔𝐾 for 14 years in a variety of roles, but my favorite and the one I did the longest was in global accounts. And I got to work with a handful of major global organizations as they transform their workplace. So it was right, after the, 708 shakeup, and got to see firsthand, people coming out of offices, and some of those changes that now seem, pretty routine, but at the time were groundbreaking for people. So it's fascinating to watch the people aspect of change. And it's something I've been really, really passionate about since kind of watching all of that firsthand and being part of those things. So I moved over to Dancker just before the pandemic. I'm a mom of 2, which was an interesting time. So I have a 6 and 8-year-old. They're great ages because they're a little independent, but no one's driving yet. So we have this really great sweet spot that we're enjoying. And I have a great husband. I met him at Fordham. He is not in our industry, and I think he can't believe what we actually do sometimes. the drama. But he has worked at 2 of our clients. So it's always been interesting to hear the end user perspective, especially now as people return to the office, and he's like, what are these pods everybody's sitting in? It looks like a phone booth. It's like, yeah, it's so you can have some privacy.
Hey, listen, I give anybody that has more than one child. I mean, I have one son. We have dogs. I think we have 4 dogs. My wife's a rescuer, and it goes really quick. And anybody that has more than one child, I give them total credit, because it's just double. You think one child is tough. I was just listening to a YouTuber yesterday, and he says, oh, I just found out my wife's pregnant. I can't even handle this one. And he's still, he's still in diapers, and now we're going to double down. I'm like, I don't, but it was really good. So anybody that has 2 kids, hats off to you, because I know it's hectic, and right.
Thank you. No, it's totally hectic. But as you say that, I think my counterpart, one of our counterparts at Dancker, has 4. And so I'm like, you know what? I think I got this under control.
Hey, I was up in Milwaukee last week. We had a reception up there. We took a tour of the Harley Davidson, and one of our sponsors, he has 10 kids. and I was like, oh my God, how do you do it? He's like, oh no, they're pretty much all out of diapers, and the 10 kids, you do the math. If you do one every year or every other year, it's a decent span. But he says, you know what, you have one, you have four, so like we have 4 dogs. If I'm going to go feed 1 dog or 4 dogs or do poop patrol every Sunday, what's a little heavier bag or whatever. But it's all the power to you all out there that have kids. If I had to do it over, that you got to have kids. In my opinion, you got to stay in diapers. Once you have one in diapers, you're going to do another, have your son, so they're both in diapers. So, because once you get out of diapers, it's very tough to go back in. That's only my opinion.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. I think once you leave the house and you don't need anything besides your house keys, there is very hard to go back.
Yeah, exactly. So, we do the dog gig, and, every night I was like, oh, can we do the foster? Here's the foster. We need to do this one. I'm like, well, whatever, 95% of me is negotiable, and I'm easy going. The other 5%'s not. But, when my wife says, hey, we want to do that, I'm like, whatever, what's another dog? It's okay. I'm okay with it. So, well, steel case furniture, correct? Desks and all that. I walk a ton of shows, so I always see steel case at maybe IFMA, or I'd see them at NeoCon, or maybe at the International Contemporary Furniture Fair that was in Javits over the years. So very familiar. And so you had that kind of office fixture background going into Dancker to get into that integration, because you had that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Steelcase, really primarily in the furniture world had played a little bit in technology, but really primarily, outfitting space with furniture, right? In whatever mode makes sense for the clients. But what I really liked about Dancker was that they had already started to expand into other things. So Dancker, we're an interior integrator. So we have the furniture division, which is really, that's how the company started. So we're almost 200 years old. So we're one of the oldest privately held companies in the Northeast. And we started with roll top desks. So every once in a while, I'll get a phone call from somebody who's like, hey, I saw you guys online and I have this desk in my basement. It was my grandfather's.
With
an
the
old
oval,
roll
right?
top secretary desk has a little Dancker. It says 𝐇𝐎𝐿 on it. So every once in a while, you get one of those calls, and we have one in our office, which is really neat. So we started, in the city making those kinds of desks, and over time realized that, furniture is one piece, but it's really hard, especially these days. And this was pre-COVID, but now absolutely, to just think about the desk or the conference table without thinking about how people are using it and what technology is going into it. So we started an AV division a couple of years ago, but this January we actually bought a company called DBE in DC. They're this awesome AV integrator to really enhance what we can do. So putting a screen on a wall is one thing, right? But really thinking through the acoustics, all the different parameters that make this a really great experience so that we feel like we're in the same room. It's a huge deal, and it's part of how space gets built, right? But it's not always how partners come to the table. People come in piecemeal. And so our goal is to be able to look at everything holistically. So ideally we can provide it holistically, but even if our client already has a vendor, at least we're looking at through the lens so that we can create a great space. So we have furniture technology, we do modular construction, we do logistics, we have multiple warehouses, we do all kinds of fun stuff, PPE distribution, all kinds of, those guys say yes to everything and figure out a way. Like they're a fun group.
Sure.
And then general like office fronts and architecture. So it allows us to look at a space. If you have a building shell, we can figure out, how to get everything into it. And so we partner with clients and A&D firms to do that. And as the sales leader, I get the benefit of being able to look across all of our customers and see what they're doing. So we work with small customers, a lot of the Fortune 500, national clients. And to me, this is really the most interesting time we've ever had in our industry, because everybody's talking about space. Everybody cares. Return to office is a thing, right? When I was working on the manufacturer side, it was still, your real estate folks are in the room, maybe facilities, procurement. And now the meetings we're having, I spoke at an HR event recently, where it's about the people, it's about real estate. It's a much broader strategy. We're speaking with the C-suite in a way that this is on their agenda. We didn't try to get in there. They're asking us. So it's a really fun time to do what we do. It's a little crazy right now as everyone tries to figure out what's next, but it's a really relevant discussion that I don't think was as relevant beforehand. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, when I look back over, everything that I've done, my parents are in upholstery furniture. So we used to have a showroom on 32nd and Lex. And I did my retail training at Levitt's, and I put a ton of those brass tables together, and I did Scotch guarding. I did it. So furniture, but you're in that kind of a little different segment of furniture, but still it's furniture. People have their ideas of where that, if they're going to buy upholstery, are they going to do a love seat, or are they going to a club chair? Are they going to, so all of those things, whether it's residential, commercial, everybody's kind of has that vision. But let me ask you this. So looking back, 2020, the beginning of 2020, everything's cranking, and then boom, everything gets shut down. So being, in that real estate component, per se, with interiors and everybody is kind of working out of the house. Some people were still in the office, but the majority of people were hybrid, or they were, at home. And now 3 years later, we've come out of the roller coaster, and the biggest thing is getting people back to work. They want to go to concerts, they want to go to ball games, they want to go to the beach, they want to do all those things, but a lot of them don't want to go back to the office. And I don't blame them, because they've proven themselves that they can get stuff done and be as productive or more productive at home. But the business owner or the company, they want to keep that company culture. So having that vision of how am I going to entice my employees or workers, call them what you want, the people are going to get things done to keep the momentum going, to come back. It's got to be a challenge, especially today, because I just saw a report where commercial real estate was at 47% occupancy. It was just a low number that they haven't had. And I was up in New York at a reception in May, and a lot of the New Yorkers told me, they said, listen, no one's in the city on Monday or Fridays. Everybody comes in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If they're hybrid, those are the one they're going to do it. And we're doing an event in September, so they don't do your event on Monday or Fridays. Do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you'll have a pretty good turnout. So, but it was interesting to, talk to people, because some people were hybrid, some are back to the office, some are still working out of the house. They come into the city when they need to. And by the way, I took the subway when I went in. I stayed out at Citi Field. I was blown away. I flew into LaGuardia back in May. Actually, I was in New York twice. I flew back for the reception, then a couple weeks later I was at Javs for the lighting show. But anyway, I took the subway in. It was safe, not a big deal, and the city looked great. Not as busy as it used to be, but it looked like it was getting back to normal per se. And but the one thing that they said that, it's just it depends on where you're living and what type of company you're working for. But the biggest thing is how do we get people to want to come back to the office, and being in that office. So when everything got kaput, what was your frame of mind, and how did you weather that storm over, because people were furloughed, offices were closed? I mean, just like myself, I was fighting with my printer for this magazine. And I was like, look, I'm going to print this thing, and half of them are going to get thrown in the trash because the offices aren't open. It's a waste of paper and postage. And then finally I just said, my artist and my editor were like, let's go digital. We have all this content. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I had a digital magazine. I was lucky. I had one. So I could pivot. I hate using that word now, but anyway, we pivoted, and boom, we haven't looked back since. But I went through that same thing. So you being in that sector where all the stuff was being, just, serious momentum in the first quarter of 2020, and then bam, everything stopped. How did you weather the storm? And maybe some lessons learned that our listeners out there, Commercial Construction Coffee Talk, would find of value.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I started in the fall of 19, so great time to start as a sales leader right before the entire world shuts down in commercial real estate.
No better time than the present to get your feet wet, right?
Yeah, I learned a lot. The beginning was a little bit crazy because we were going through more of the technical challenges around jobs that were in the middle of construction and repeated shutdowns, and some of that just logistical chaos that went on. And manufacturing, we supply products from over 200 manufacturers. So trying to figure out what states are open and who's closed, that whole thing was a little crazy. But I think in general, trying to figure out where the headwinds were going in terms of when people started bringing people back, what would that look like? What would they need? Our healthcare division, they never stopped. Our ops guys were out there all the time. We set up things like we have a very large healthcare client base. And so they were full speed ahead, and, whatever they needed, we figured out. And some of our suppliers did some really amazing work during that time. And it was a testament to some of the people that we work with, and definitely our operations team and what they were able to do. So that group just full steam ahead the whole time. For the more traditional corporate side, that first summer, I think people would start allowed come back in New Jersey in maybe the end of the summer.
I was gonna say,
And it was a weird twilight zone, right? You'd walk through offices and you'd have calendars to a certain date, people's lunches. It was like a very eerie, very strange time. Now, I had 2 kids and a husband all working from home in 1,400 square feet. So as soon as this office door unlocked, I was in the parking lot ready to come in. So everybody had their own, their own home situation. Some are cozier than others. And I think early in COVID, that really helped drive whether or not people were coming back. I would say in the last, from the beginning of this year forward, right? So let's look at January forward. I think we really have a clear path where the safety is not the issue, right? There was still a little bit of, ups and downs. For 2023, safety is not the barrier to why people aren't back, right? I think the big theme is we've given people more choice and control about how they work, when they work, and where they work than people have had, since the Industrial Revolution started. And so trying to wrestle that back is not going to be an easy feat, and it may not be a worthwhile one. So most of our client base is hybrid, whether that's 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. There are very few people who've gone all the way to fully remote, and very few people who've gone all the way to 5 days, unless you're in a more operational or, something where it's clear you can only do the work in person. So the vast majority are trying to figure out, how do you give people that balance with a version of hybrid, but figuring out what that looks like varies dramatically, right? So we have our 1 day a week in office people, we have our 3 day a week in office people, or we ask people to come in 3 days. And then when you talk to facilities and you look at the badging data, nobody's here anyway. So there's that whole spectrum of what people ask and what's actually happening. And at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to, you start to talk about it. Leadership understands the benefits of having people come together, right? It's very hard. We hear from HR leaders onboarding new people, and the amount of turnover for people who've started in a more remote or a hybrid environment versus what it was like before is much higher. Even if you adjust for some of the norms that have happened where we've had spikes and how people move around, that training, development, mentoring, how do you get the knowledge from a senior person if they're in an office at home and a junior person who's in an office at home and they don't know each other, right? There's a real people side to onboarding, mentoring, and engagement and belonging that I think the office serves a purpose for, that's people are having trouble doing virtually. The issue of trust building is one that comes up a lot. So, you and I, we're looking at each other, right? If we were doing this solely over audio, we wouldn't develop the same rapport. And imagine if you and me were sitting on the same, in the same conference room. So the idea of, trust building, and if you're going to innovate, you need to trust the people you're taking risks with. There's that whole chain of innovation, right? So if I don't trust you, I won't take risks. If I don't take risks, we won't innovate. You don't get the feedback fast enough. There's a lot of reasons why companies want people together. They're trying to figure out what that balance is, right? Because on the employee side, you have 4 dogs. I, before COVID, would have, or whatever we're calling this, right, would have never gotten a dog because I was traveling. And I would never be able, half my team, they're in sales, they would have never had dogs. Half of them got dogs during COVID. They've always wanted them. They finally got a chance. People are having dinner with their kids. I went to register my daughter for gymnastics. I was the only one in dress clothes. Everyone had already been to the gym. That's a quality of life you couldn't have even imagined. So taking, people who have now found a new well-being, or a new support structure or care structure where they're not dropping their kids off at 6 a.m. and picking them up at 8 p.m. They don't want to go back to that. And so trying to figure out that balance is important for each and every company. and they're handling it a little bit differently. So it's been really interesting to watch. We've had some early adopters who've learned things. And I think one of the early things that has been interesting is you can't just say it and hope it'll happen. Right? You can't just say we're open and expect people to show up. And you also, and this hurts us as someone who builds beautiful spaces. If you build it, they will come is not a thing. You can't just build it, because it's a holistic model that needs to be addressed. We can create amazing spaces. You can have great tech, but if the cultural piece and the process piece and the accountability piece is not tied in, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest space on earth. You can't just build pretty things and hope people come. It won't happen. So we had some people invested in these great spaces, but without a more holistic strategy. And I think what people are learning is it's the people strategy tied into the spaces that work and the technology that makes it a great experience, and the amenities and the way to give people ways to socialize with each other. You really have to think through that whole spectrum of what you give your employees. And I think for us, that makes it an exciting time, because we're not just building spaces that look great. We're building spaces where people actually are drawn to, and they get to know one another. And it's a cultural asset to the company. It's a physical manifestation of your company, of your culture. It's a physical touch point. And so when done well, it's a great asset. And so it's not just this thing on the balance sheet everybody wants to get rid of. It's this hub that has a real function and a real purpose. And so it's been really great to see, as people start to dip their toe in and figure out what does that look like for them. We're starting to build spaces that really do attract people. And we say it's got to earn the commute, right? It really does have to earn the commute. It has to be worth it to get in the car and come to the office. And I personally commute. I'm up in Nutley. So we have great Italian food, but it's an hour and 10 minutes from where I sit talking to you today. And as a leader in the company, for me, it makes sense to be in 4 days a week, because my team's all over the place. We're a big group, and I'd rather be with them, and it makes sense for me. For leadership, I think an easier value proposition, because you're leading your team and you have an upper management. It's a little easier. For the day-to-day employee, what are those benefits, right? You have to understand, why are they coming in? What kind of space would earn the commute? A couple of buckets of stuff that I think are being incorporated into most of the offices, if that would be helpful. What are the big takeaways, that we're seeing implemented? I think the choice and control piece is a big one. So giving people options. When we sent everybody home, we just said, take your laptop or whatever it is and go. And then they went home and they picked where they wanted to work. Did they want to stand? Did they want to sit? Did they want to lay on the bed? Did they want to sit on a couch? Did they want to go work outside? And through video, we saw all kinds of choices, right? I sit in my son's room because that's where I can see in the backyard, and I like looking at the trees and they sway in the wind.
Oh yeah.
That's my choice. My husband, he likes to sit on the couch with our laptop table, right? People made choices. And now when they come back to the office, they expect choice. They don't want to just be told, go sit over there. They want to be able to move around. They want to be able to stand if they like to stand. And it's harder to accommodate everybody's preferences. So, the way that we see most companies doing that is by having, we call an ecosystem of spaces, right? Or a kit of parts. What are the different things that make up your floor plan? And even if you have a room like I'm in now, so this is a one-person phone room. This is a height adjustable desk. So I have a coworker, when he's in here, he stands the whole time. I'm sitting because I like the camera angle better. We have ones that are more loungy. We have ones that are more formal. We have ones that are more traditional. We have, giving people a bunch of options so they can pick is a really big deal, because then they're back in control. And that could be posture, their choice of posture, sit, stand, relax. That could be their choice of privacy. So a lot of people got a really nice, quiet space when they were home, and then they come to the office and it's complete chaos. People really don't like the chaos. Acoustics are probably the biggest thing that you get employee feedback on, probably followed second by technology issues. But the idea that I had acoustic privacy for the first time, and I talked on the phone and no one could hear me, and now I'm back in the office and everyone can hear me and I can hear them, and it's disruptive on Zoom. That's one of the biggest things we're addressing right now, using whether it's acoustic treatments, sound masking, higher quality glass fronts, pods that have better acoustics. there's a whole slew of solutions, but that's definitely something that when we left, people were not as sensitive to noise as they are now. Choice of privacy, even just visually, being able to go somewhere and not see people. Very early on, especially, people wanted they wanted nooks and crannies to hide in.
Mhm.
So maybe I don't want to be in the middle of the chaos. Even if you have your own cubicle and it's assigned, you still might be in the middle. I have one of the women on my team, she's on the main route to the mailroom, the bathroom, and the kitchen. And she chooses to work in an enclave because she's like, I am not used to this anymore. And we have that room so she can have that choice. So that's not a barrier her coming in the office. She just comes and makes a choice. So trying to create a space where people can make individual choices is something that, you know, the leading design firms we work with, our own teams, our clients, that I think is a really big piece of the puzzle. And I think when people feel like you've thought of them and you've given them options, you've given them choice, it reduces a lot of the friction for return to the office.
You know, I mean, I was working out of my house, so I was used to it. I'm a million miler on plus on Delta, so I really didn't care if I got on another plane traveling. I tell you, I hadn't traveled. I think I did a couple of flights from March of 2020 until the end of last year. And then this year I told my wife, I go, look, I got to get back. I was walking 30, 40 trade shows a year, lighting, concrete, whatever. And I said, look, I got to go out and see who's still out there. Or if they've gone to another company, or I just needed to get my contacts fresh again. And so I went on the road and talking to people. So many people have found that there's more than just work before March of 2020, because that's what it was. It was grind, and no life. And now they don't have to burn gas. They don't have to go through traffic, you know, all this stuff. And everybody's kind of in different levels. And I also, you know, I told someone a couple of weeks ago on my podcast, I said, remember this day that we had this conversation, and 5 years from now, give me a call and let me know what restaurants look like, you know, just from an in dining, you know, whether it's, you know, fast casual, whatever, tell me what they look like, because no one knows, but it's just, everything has been transformed. And so many companies though had some of their best years over the last couple of years. They weathered the storm, and the you know, listen, some people aren't made to work out of the house. They got to be in the office, you know, but a lot of people that were forced, they had no choice, that they found out that there's definitely a much more of a equilibrium with work and you know, relaxing, or, you know, there's more to life than just work. And that's the biggest thing that I think that propelled so many companies that were they kind of found that balance where they could have their people, and they didn't want to rock the boat, but they also wanted to get them back. So whatever they could entice them in, like you design workspaces and so forth. Like I have a Very desk here. I stand all day too. I didn't do that before, you know, but I do it now. And so I went through that same kind of mindset. And it's amazing though, when you talk to people, they're like, yeah, you know, I have this nice home office, but you know, now I'm starting to go back into the office, and you know, and listen, we want to see people back, you know, and as a business owner, if I had, let's say, 100 employees, and you know, some of them could work out of the house. Sometimes some of them I want out in the field, you know, seeing clients and so forth, but some of them might, you know, in the US. And being in construction, we're both in it, basically, real estate, construction, office space, it's all tied to, you know, to the hip, that everybody kept on working. I mean, I didn't know a contractor that didn't go out, you know, they put their mask on, they got on the plane, and boom, you know, they had no choice. If you were essential business, it didn't matter, you know. So I have to wear a mask or whatever, and I got to go. It's really dependent on what state you were in. You know, regulation. Like here in Georgia, we were one of the first states to open up. I had 3 projects I watched, all, they didn't miss a beat. It was like nothing happened, except they had to, you know, be a little more careful. They had to put some, you know, parameters in on the construction site, you know, for safety reasons and stuff. But all the contractors and engineers and architects, they all just kept on going, especially healthcare. You can't build a hospital in a week. That's a year and a half, 2-year project. You know, I know Arthur Blank, he's got this children's hospital. I just went down, my wife went down to Miami. She's an interior designer, so she was doing a job down in Miami. And we drove down. I go, hey, babe, have you seen this thing on the highway? the children's hospital that they built. This thing's not even going to open until 2024. They've been building it over the last couple of years. This is just massive. You should see this campus right off of I-85 going to downtown Atlanta. And but they've been working on that project for a while. And they didn't miss a beat because it was an essential. It was a healthcare project. So so it's but for all you out there that are listening to this, okay, the people that you work for, they have your best interests at heart. So, but they want to get their company culture back, but they also don't want to upset you. So if they want you to be hybrid, there's a medium in there for you to figure it out. But you have to open your mouth. You have to tell them how you feel, right? Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think companies are trying to find the right balance the same way employees are trying to find the right balance. And it's going to be different for every role. And I think that's part of the biggest challenge, is that the idea that you just set a specific path and it works for everyone and that's good enough is not true. Everything has to be more customized. Even what do you do with your, facility space real estate? There was a little bit more of a cookie cutter. Well, this is what we do. And now it's like, well, for each company, it's a little different, right? And so that agreement between the employer and the employee could depend on groups. It's very nuanced, and it's very custom in a way that we've never really seen before. And so the pendulum is going to find its middle ground, right? And I do think it will be hybrid. We've had companies who started to go more to 5 days or started to go more fully remote, and they're back in the hybrid bucket now. So I think that is the future. And in order to really have a great hybrid work experience, I think the other piece that we haven't really talked about is presence equity, right? So if we are going hybrid and you and I are either both remote, or I'm in the office and you're remote, or vice versa, no matter what experience we're having and where we are, it still has to be great. And I think that's something, when we all went home, right, that, whatever the day was that they sent everybody home, that next day, everybody was on Zoom. And so right now, you and I have a pretty equitable experience. You can hear me, I can hear you, you can see me, you have great lighting, I'm in a room with good acoustics. Like this is the ideal setting. And if you and I were sitting across from each other in a 2-person huddle room, we'd also have a great experience. The challenge is half plus of our meetings have a virtual participant, or have an in-person participant when everybody else is virtual. And those are the experiences that are not great. Those are the ones that people struggle with, right? You have the 5 people in a conference room and the person on the screen who can't get a word in edgewise, who's 50 inches wide, who's got salad in the teeth and everyone can see it, who's super uncomfortable. Or you have the opposite, where you came in and now you're the one person sitting in a room and you're looking at 5 little squares, in a big empty conference room. So I think the other thing that people are making great strides on, and this is one of the reasons we're growing in the technology group, is that there's an opportunity to get much better about what that experience looks and feels like. So whether it's hearing, seeing, having things be the size of a person, so you're closer, you're more eye to eye, the ability to build trust with someone virtually is much better when it's an equitable experience. It's not as embarrassing when you can't figure out the technology, if it's really easy to use in one touch. So all those barriers that you can take away to create this great experience, regardless of location, are, I think, the next frontier of where we're going. And then you throw in AI, where you can capture meeting summaries and you can use some of the technology. You use a real whiteboard and people can see not only what you write, but watch you write it. Watch my lips move while I'm talking, while I'm writing. That requires 2 cameras and something on the content. To be able to do that and have you watch me write it and then have it send it to everybody in the room makes it as close to you being next to me as we're going to get, right? And I think those advances, the technology is getting much better, and the products and the options on that integrate some of these things make it much more seamless, so that even if you are the only remote person, or you're hybrid that day, it's not a worse experience when you go in the office, which is something we hear. It can be where I have a great setup at home. I have all control over it. I have dual monitors, I have great lighting. I go in the office, I'm dark. No one can see what I'm doing. You want to remove all these barriers, right? And just have a really great, simple person-to-person interaction And ideally you get the lift of something like AI to take notes, or something where you can have a camera and they can see what you're doing. Like that, I think, is the next frontier of like really great collaborative experiences. And we're starting to see, I'm excited because we're starting to see things like front row on Microsoft Teams, the wider display monitors that humanize the experience a little bit more. And so there's a lot more thought around all of the different things that make it a really great, equitable experience. And so that also makes it a better space that you want to go into, right? So there's a lot of work on the tech front that I think is making this easier and more seamless and a better experience for the people on both ends, regardless, you know, if you're in or out of the office.
Hey, listen, I went out and bought my mic, and I was going to do my podcast on the construction sites and interview people, and then bam, you know, and I was like, okay, so I got a banner made for me when and boy, was that a terrible interview, you know. Anyway, I look back at some of my older, you know, videos and stuff, and I just laugh at myself. And but you're so right. You're right on point, because so many people have different you know, thoughts of what do I think? Are they right in the way that they're designing it, or how they're going to get me back? And Zoom is not going anywhere. I talk to people all day long. They're like, "Oh, I'm zoomed out." I'm like, "I know." But guess what? Without Zoom, this would have taken you your day, would have taken you 3 weeks. So look at all the stuff, and you can pick and choose where you want to do your in-person. Just like every day, I pick 10 people that I want to pick up the phone and call. Your phone is the best tool that you can have. You know, I'm a digital marketer now, but I'm just telling you, you know, your phone is like the best tool in your arsenal. And I pick 10 people that I want to talk to. Even if I want to do a Zoom call, just talk on the phone. It's just amazing the conversations you can have versus just shooting you emails all day. And so everybody's from March of 2020 till today, it's just been just a massive transformation with technology. And now we're kind of in that, we're like, it's like the tide is going down, or it's full, a high tide or low tide, but now, you know, the water kind of just stays there, and we're kind of in this still of, okay, what's it going to look like down the road? And everybody's got their own variations of it. And so I totally concur with everything you said. And so very well thought out. And I can't wait to see what some of the office spaces that you guys designed down the road. For sure, next year when I have my I think it's my 6th annual profiles. If you do, send me a really cool office project that you're redesigning, and you know, we'll feature it. So, if there was one positive thought or phrase that you'd like to leave with our listeners before you leave your contact info, what would that be?
I always say it to my team, and they make fun of me, but I always say, chaos is opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, I'm a lacrosse guy, so chaos is I'm a hockey lacrosse guy, so chaos, I love it. You learn, you make mistakes, you pick yourself up, you know, you might have a plan, you scrap it, you go. Chaos is a good thing. It makes you think, it makes you got to be
You never
flexible.
know how you can help somebody, right? So right now people are grappling with all kinds of stuff, and so the more chaotic, the more opportunities you have to be able to support, especially a client, in a way they, you know, didn't know you could before. So it's been a good motto for us. It's especially over the last couple of years, and I think into the next few.
If anybody out there is you know, that's thinking about, you know, transforming their office to you know, the reopen of their office space, or thinking about, you know, buying some real estate and converting, and God knows there's some deals out there, how would they reach out to you, you know, to make and you know, bounce some questions off you?
Yes, you can always find me on LinkedIn, Valerie Santanasto. My email is vsanta, SANTA, NASTO, Santanasto at Dancker, DANCKER.com. Or I also love my cell phone, 917-817-6567.
Awesome. So listen, if you're out there and you're kind of having this, you know, thoughts in your head, you know, what am I going to do? How should I do it? And, you know, how am I going to get my employees back? And I love that equity line, you know, as far as, you know, having an equitable workspace, that is so on point. And if you're thinking about those things, give Valerie a call, or, you know, message her on LinkedIn, and, you know, they'll be able to help you. I mean, listen, the reason why I had her on here is because, listen, it's summertime, you know, but, you know, in the fall, everybody's going to get back, you know, into the scheme of things, and finish out the year, and then, what's 2024 going to look like? And listen, there's a lot of real estate out there that's got to get transformed. So if you're going to do it right, ask a professional that's in there every day looking at things, and all their clients are, and she might come up with something like, I never heard that equitable phrase before, so I'm not going to steal it from you, but I might use it down the road. So give Valerie a call, and she'll be able to help you. If anybody wants to reach me, you can get me at davidc@ccr-mag.com. And listen, if you want to get on the show, the way you do it is send me an email. The publicist sent me something. I liked it. I read the bio and whatever. I was like, hey, we'd love to have this person on. So that's how you get on here. That's how you get in the magazine. That's how you get on send stuff to me. We love content. I look at everything. I might not, it's very tough to get in the magazine, but if you send me something, I will personally come back to you, and I will give you the live link if we post it or whatever we do with it. And let me be let me judge the book by its cover. Okay. And I know you don't like when I say this, but it's like the lottery. And it was $1 billion last week. Someone won it, and I think California. So hats off to them. But the bottom line is, if you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. Okay. So if you don't send me something, I can't get you on this podcast, or I can't get you featured in the magazine or put you up on the social media. So send that stuff to me. And for all of you out there that are watching this, hit the like button. Okay. Let's get Valerie, the algorithms out there so they can find out about Dancker and all that stuff. So we appreciate that. So Valerie, pleasure talking to a New York, New Jerseyite, the tri-state area. It's great to see, and Fordham know it very well. So, it's so exciting to talk to people, and then you get to meet them down the road. So hopefully if we do an event in New York or what have you, I'd love to meet you in person, or come to your office and check out the digs and so forth. So we really appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon, and thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So with that said, Valerie, say goodbye from Somerville, New Jersey.
Bye, everybody.
And I've lost I still my Philly twang. People are like, hey, where are you from? You're not from Georgia. I'm like, no, I'm a Yankee. I'm a damn Yankee. I stay down here. I live down here now. So, but they're like, you're not from New Jersey, you're not from Boston. No, I'm from Philly. So I've lost my twang. But anyway, I'm going to sign off from Sugar Hill, which is about 30 miles out north of downtown Atlanta, just below the Beaufort Dam on Lake Lanier. And I think it's time to go out on the boat here shortly. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of the week. Two things. If you're out there on a construction site, make sure you're safe. We want you to get home at night, see your dogs, kids, whatever we want. And we want you to be able to go out and do it again. And it's really hot out there. So if you're out there, make sure you're drinking lots of liquids, stay hydrated. Dehydration, headaches, no fun. So make sure you're drinking all that liquid out there and while you're getting things done and your projects on time and on budget and all that good stuff. So Valerie, thank you so much for spending the time. And to all you out there in commercial construction coffee talk, we will see you next time on another episode. Valerie, I look forward to meeting you in person, and no fist bumps. I'm going to shake your hand. Okay.
Same here.
All right. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next time. See ya.